Hey everybody, today I'm talking about Bristol 1350, which is a 2021 release board game by Facade Games as part of their Dark Cities series. This one accommodates 1 to 9 players and takes around 30 minutes to play on average. Now before I go any further, I want to say how cool these boxes are as part of these Facade Games. They look like books and they have a real nice durable magnetic feel to them. And I'm really impressed with the box and the general production, because this game has really gone all out in terms of getting its components right. You've got a nice neoprene mat here as your board. You've got these metal wagons and just some really nice production in the general, such as custom dice, etc. Now I will say I think this is the deluxe version of the game, so it might differ slightly to the general retail version. But enough of that, let's go on to how the game plays. So this game is set in Bristol, obviously, as part of or around the era of the Black Death. And the idea is that we are going to be one of these pawns trying to escape the city and avoid capturing the plague. And the winner is going to be the player or players to first escape the city in a healthy cart. That's because at all times in the game, people have these symptom cards. And these have numbers, I think, varying from 1 to 4. And if you ever go above 6 or above, as the total value of these symptom cards, then that means you have the plague for the rest of the game. So you want to try and avoid that at all costs. So the game is going to play quite simply. So the person who's furthest in the lead and closest to the finish mark here is going to roll this big cluster of dice like so. And that is going to show different things. You've got different colours which relate to the different colours of wagons. You've got rats and you've got apples. So apples are essentially safe dice, and the rats can potentially give you more symptoms if they are still that way at the end of the turn. So each player's when it comes to each player, you're going to have the opportunity to do an action. And those actions are pretty simple. Number one is to re-roll 2 of these dice. So, for example, if you really want to get the tanned wagon moving here, you might want to re-roll some of these. Let's see, I did this, for example, and there you go. I've got another one there. The other actions you can do is to manipulate the wagon, either by pushing to the front of the wagon, like so. You could do that as an action. You can push people off the back of the wagon. So if I was this player, I could push them back and then go right to the back. And if there's no other spots for them, they're basically eliminated from the game. But if that player is basically healthy, then the other player will be eliminated as well. You can jump from one wagon to the back of the other wagon and switch places with the other person, like so. And you can also choose to draw one of these remedy cards. And these remedy cards let you do lots of cool things, such as, well, let's use one for example here. You can discard this card to lock 2 dice, so if you're really happy with a particular roll, you can make sure that those aren't moved, or you can kind of manipulate your symptoms and things like that. So lots of different things you can do with these remedy cards. So the game is going to keep playing until someone does escape the city, and as I said, if the wagon is healthy, then all the players on that wagon are going to survive. But if you ever do contract more or kind of gain more than or 6 or more of these symptoms, then your new objective is going to be try and bring all the other players down with you and make sure that nobody escapes the city alive. So once all players have taken their actions, you're going to evaluate all the dice that have been rolled. Now you're going to consider a couple of things. So the first thing you're going to look at is if any of the colours have at least 2 rats in their certain pools. So for example, this van here, or this cart, has 2 rats in theirs where the other 2 colours don't. And that's important because that is going to increase the odds that the plague is going to spread, because you're going to add a number or 2 symptom cards to that relevant colours pool here. So for example, the birch one has 2. And all players in that particular wagon are going to add their symptom cards to the pile, and then they're all going to get shuffled up, and then you're going to draw random 2 cards back. And that, of course, could change your state of play, whether that's better or worse. For example, here I've done a lot better, but it does mean that more cards are added into the deck, and potentially value 4s are added into the deck, which again will really increase the odds in which the plague is going to spread. And after that's done, you are going to look at all the different colours. So the tan wagon is going to move 4 spaces. The darker one is going to move 1. and the brown one is also going to move 1, and that is all because there are that many coloured dice rolled. And of course, as gameplay continues, suspicion is going to start growing whether who's got the plague or not. You're going to want to start jumping from cart to cart into areas that you think are safe, and basically try to avoid any cart that you think might have a member with the plague on it. And that's going to be how it's going to play. You're going to be trying to convince other people that you're safe, even though you might not be. You're going to be trying to work with each other, and maybe if you have got a completely safe cart, you're going to want to try and get high numbers rolled so that you can move quickly. But at the same time, other people are going to be kind of making you roll rats to make that you are mingling with one another. So the element of social deduction does come through quite strongly, and you can actually use deduction as a whole as a bit of a backbone to your decisions, because if you're forcing people to mingle a lot, then their odds are really going to go up. But it doesn't mean they are that doesn't necessarily mean that they're going to be infected, because again, there are still some low numbers in there, and you could get lucky and actually avoid getting the plague at all. And it's going to be a constant jostling for position, jumping from wagon to wagon, pushing people off your wagons if you think they are infected, and so on. And of course, working with each other and hopefully trying to get out that city alive. And if you are the first person or the first wagon out alive and your wagon is completely healthy, then all players on that wagon are going to win. And that's going to be how the game is going to play out. It's relatively quick, it only takes about half an hour to play. And some pretty simple dice rolling mechanisms with that Yahtzee style, and trying to re-roll things and etc. Using these cards as a bit of to give yourself a bit more manipulation, give yourself a bit more freedom in terms of not catching the plague, in terms of rolling things that you want to roll, and just increasing your odds of survival. So there are some things I really do like about this game. I think in reality it works quite well, particularly at the higher player counts. I had a really successful game at 6-player the other day, and it did work really well. Now I will say, even though the game does say it plays at 1 to 9 players, I don't think it scales incredibly well at those lower player counts, because you're going to have to start using a lot of dummy players, which of course is not quite the same. But if you do have that 6, 7, 8 or 9 player mark, then the game is going to start shining through a lot better, and it becomes a lot more interactive and just basically more fun. Whereas at the lower player counts, I think it just doesn't work as well, and it is nowhere near as fun. Of course, a lot of the player interaction, a lot of the fun and intrigue of the game does come with bluffing. It does come with trying to prove your innocence, which, if you are a fan of social deduction games, that's going to be pretty standard for you, and you're going to know what this game is going to offer in terms of that. But it does have a slightly different vibe, where all the kind of roles aren't dished out at the beginning of the game. It is something that can change throughout. So everyone's going to start the game being healthy, but at any point you could start contracting that plague, meaning that your objective is going to shift. Now that is one of the things that does stem into quite a negative point of this game that is quite hard for me to wrap my head around, because the rulebook does say that you absolutely must not try to contract the plague. And while I get that thematically, it makes complete sense. I think people who are really wrapped up in rules and their sole objective of the game is to win, then that can throw a bit of a spanner in the works. Because why wouldn't you just keep mingling, everybody get the plague, and then everybody wins? Now that might seem completely against the spirit of the game, but people will think like that, and to guarantee victory. And so in terms of that, the rules themselves are quite flimsy, and you are encouraging people to play in the right spirit of the game, which I think 99% of the time that is going to be the case. But it's just something to bear in mind, that the game is held together based on this idea that you are trying to do well for yourself, rather than try and sabotage it to make everybody win. There is, of course, quite a strong element of luck in this game, not only with the symptom cards that you're going to get, because you could just get lucky, have a starting hand with a 3 in it, and then draw a 4, and then automatically you've got the plague for the rest of the game. And this leads into another kind of problem I have with the game, because you have quite a strong element of trust to actually make this game work, because as soon as you get that 6 value of symptoms, you automatically have the plague for the rest of the game, and you have to just trust the fact that that is going to be the case, because just because you have 6 at the moment, it doesn't mean that you can't mingle again and then go down again, and you're going to have to basically rely on people telling the truth that they've never had the plague, when they could just lie and say that they never had it in the first place. and they've always had below 6. So it is kind of impossible to govern that, and is another quite significant flaw in the way the game works. But of course, if you have players who play in the right spirit, then that isn't going to be an issue. But it's something to bear in mind, that there is a big scope for players to lie and cheat in this game. There is, of course, a lot of luck in the game in terms of rolling the dice here as well, but that is all fun, and the randomness of that doesn't hurt the game at all, and it keeps the game moving along nicely. You have got some decent mitigation here with the remedy cards that do a lot of things, again, to try and increase your odds on getting the lower symptom cards and do what you want to do. So you've got some mitigation there, and there's quite a lot of cool things that these can do to protect yourself, and also to again, increase your odds to win the game, essentially. So you know, forsaking your turn to take a remedy card is often a good option. I'm perfectly happy with how long the game takes. You know, this takes about half an hour to play, which I think feels about right. I certainly don't feel that the game outstayed its welcome at all, and you're always kind of invested in what you're doing, trying to make sure that people aren't messing with the dice that you want, to try and make you mingle with each other, making sure that you're constantly moving if you think you've got a healthy wagon, etc. And yeah, so it really is kind of a put your feet up and enjoy the process kind of game, and it doesn't outstay its welcome for a game of this kind of little decision space. So no issues at all, turns are quick, and the game is relatively quick as well. As I said at the beginning of the game, component quality is fantastic, and that also goes into the artwork and aesthetics as well. The game board looks cool, it has a nice rustic old map feel to it, but it still feels nice, it still looks good. All the card artwork is very kind of synonymous with the time, with this kind of almost grotesque style. Gothic art. I like the way that everything is put together. No issues at all with the way the game looks or of how it's produced. In fact, it's all top standard. Thematically, I'm surprised the Black Death is a theme that's not explored so much. I think it's quite a significant time in history, and this one has done a good job of capturing that, and it's always nice to see some new themes and new skins being used, and so I'm perfectly happy with the direction it's taken in terms of its theme and setting. And the setup and teardown time as well is quick. You know, there's no issue here. Just deal a few cards out to each other, get all the wagons set up, and you are pretty much good to go. There is an option to also give players individual player powers that they can use throughout their turn based on their colour. And these add a little bit more, variability into the game, add a bit more spice into the game, and give you special independent actions that nobody else can do. So if you want to inject that, you can, to add a bit more legs to the game. And so that's a welcome addition. The progression of the game is quite interesting, because sometimes you might think, there's no chance in hell that the wagon who's mixed up, 5 times are all safe, and in fact they will be, and you're still wondering, why are they still running away with it? Why are they still trying to go for that final line when one of them is going to be infected? So, in that aspect, the randomness and of course the random draw of drawing your symptom cards actually does work quite well in the game, and adds that murkiness to the water, so you haven't got perfect information in the decisions you're going to make. So you do have to go with that gut reaction and are relying on what people are telling you, which is what you want from a social deduction game. So overall, I think Bristol 1350 does what it does pretty well. I will say that social deduction games are something that have really kind of fallen out of favour for me over the last few years. I used to be really high on them, and now I can really take them or leave them. But I do like the way that the social deduction is just a part of the game, and you actually have got a kind of a main framework to build on in the first place, and it's not solely based on player interaction. You have got to take actions, and the social interaction between the players is just a thread throughout the game that you can use to add a bit of flavour. I can't complain at all with the way the game looks and is produced. It's done such a good job, and I had a lot of fun with it, to be honest. It went down a lot better than I thought it would, and it certainly is a game that does peak at those higher player counts. I wouldn't recommend this one if you don't have that 6+ player count regularly, because it just doesn't work quite as well. Some simple mechanisms, but they come together well. It feels fresh, but I will say that some of those factors do bring the score down quite a bit for me, particularly the fact that you cannot govern when people have the plague or not. They can very easily lie, and unfortunately people will do that. Of course, if you have a trusted group, they won't do that, but if you play with randomers who take their gaming very seriously and win at all costs, then the game can fundamentally be broken, which is quite a shame, to be honest. It would have been nice to have seen something a bit different, how the game works work a bit differently, whether you've got perfect information, you can clearly see which cards you formerly had, so you can just at a glance tell if someone's had the plague or not, and they can't pull the wool over your eyes and manipulate the game so they win by cheating. But yeah, that aside, I don't want to dwell too much on that. The game is fun, it's fast, it's different, it's engaging from start to finish. There's some dice rolling, there's some bluffing, there's some moving around and manipulating the board, etc. Some relatively interesting card play. And yeah, overall it's a nice little package, comes in a lovely little box, wonderfully produced. And I think if you're a fan of these Dark Cities series, then Bristol is going to be a welcome addition, and it's going to look wonderful on your shelf with these book style boxes. So that concludes my thoughts on Bristol 1350. If you have enjoyed the review, please hit like and subscribe to my channel, and check out my other videos too. For everyone else, I'll see you next time on Chairman of the Board. Bye.